Three, two, one. Welcome to the SaaS Pulse Show. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of SaaS Talent. And really excited today. We have an awesome co-founder and COO of a really interesting SaaS company, right? That we're going to learn more about here. It's really cool. So it's Steve Engdahl. He is the co-founder and COO of Dealboard. Sorry about that. Dealboard, the global electronic seafood market. Everybody, we are getting after it. So when Steve goes to the bar, right, what do you say? I'm in fish. I'm into fish. I do fish, right? So I love it. Great to have you on the show, Steve.
Michael, great to be here. You're creating such fantastic and producing such fantastic content. So yeah, I love being a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks. It's awesome. So let's dive right into it here because your background for everybody listening right now. So when you look at Steve's background, COO, he's obviously CPO product, right? He's got a lot of the elements of what early stage companies need. So definitely connect with him if you're early stage and you need some help. But let's jump into it here and talk about the superhero backstory. That's what I always like to start with. So what brought you, so the journey that brought you to Dealboard, what does that look like?
Yeah, superhero. I don't know whether I'm wearing a cape or not, but yeah, I
You're
think
the
you framed
evil.
it right.
You're like the
Uh,
evil. No, you're the good guy. But yeah, you got the
well, we'll see. But you framed it right. I'm a B2B SaaS product guy. And throughout all the other things that I've done in my career, that's always been something that's core. But I wasn't born that way. New parents don't look at their newborn child for the first time and say, "Yeah, it's a product person."
it's a
I
CPO.
started, doesn't happen that way, but I started my first job out of college and saw some things that it seemed like they needed to be done in order to make my job easier and some other people's jobs easier around me. And I started doing product management, but I didn't even know formally that that's what that was. And that
Right.
wasn't a role that had that name at that company. But from there, in my progression, fortunately, shortly thereafter, I had the opportunity to get formally trained by some of the best in product management and trained and mentored in that strategy, product marketing, sales, a bunch of other things. Um, I guess I've also always been motivated and inspired where there's a vision of the future that is out of reach today. And it motivates me to see if we can achieve it if we really put our minds to it. So you put those two things together, an inspiring big picture vision, and then assimilating a whole bunch of fantastic tools and learnings and approaches on ways to get there. And that's really what's fueled my career and the product and company growth that I've been able to contribute to along the way.
Yeah, and I'm going to reiterate for everybody listening right now. I mean, a lot of my listeners are early stage, they're solopreneurs, they're thinking about this. Steve is definitely somebody you should connect with, right? So you don't find many people in SaaS that have the well-rounded background of him. Like, so he's going to be able to play a lot of roles, be able to give you a lot of advice. So highly recommend you talk to him. But let's get into Dealboard. When I first looked
Yeah.
at this, I thought it was some type of sales platform. And then I go in and I see the global electronic seafood market. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what's this market look like? So there's a lot of fish out there in the sea, right? That we say to everybody, there's a lot of fish in the sea. I don't know if that's your tagline. There's a lot of fish in the sea. But tell
Mhm.
us about Dealboard. Tell us about the product, the value proposition, the elevator pitch.
Sure. Yeah, it is a global B2B e-commerce platform for the commercial seafood industry. We think of it as digital transformation for fish. I've done a lot of digital transformation in
Love it.
other industries, highly regulated industries, banking, securities, mortgage, whatever. We're doing that for fish. Why should you care? Seafood's the largest food commodity in the world.
Totally.
It feeds billions of people. It's a global industry. I don't know, we haven't had this discussion whether you like fish or not, but if you go to a restaurant,
Love
go to the
fish.
grocery store, you order something, 9 times out of 10, I bet what you order isn't something that was swimming around right near you there in the Schuylkill or something like that, if I
Sure.
said that right.
Right.
But you're ordering the salmon and it was swimming off the coast of Alaska somewhere. It was probably processed in China or South America. and then it goes to your plate in Philadelphia, or it goes to a sushi bar in Kansas, your shrimp probably farmed in Ecuador or India or something like that. This
Hmm,
stuff moves all over. And the companies in the supply chain are buying shipping containers worth of the stuff. It's, the high volume
totally.
that we focus on, and they're doing it with somebody who's halfway around the world. And what would you think is the most common way that they use to negotiate those deals? We took a look at it, and they're using WhatsApp. They're
Amazing.
doing this all the time. So
Doing
Dealboard
deals.
helps companies expand their business, helps seafood companies expand, and we do it with two
I love
things.
it.
We're a platform, so there's a technology there. The seafood community has been underserved by technology, and we're providing an easy way to need to communicate to finalize transactions. But it's also a community, and I use that word a lot. We do background checks and validation because there are so many people in and around the community that, there's some fraud and bad actors and whatever. And so we're
Sure.
providing a safe space for these companies to do these trades.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at this, I thought about the market, I thought, wow, this is a big market. But in my mind, what I'm really curious about are the players, right? So my thought process is there are a, a fewer main players, right? Like if I have fish, or if I'm collecting fish, I probably give them to someone at some point, and then there's a supply chain. But tell
Mhm.
the audience what that looks like, right? So who are the major kind of ICP, like who you're selling to? Like who are you selling to?
Yeah, got it. The market does have a lot of fragmentation. There is definitely, the typical spectrum of largest companies to some really small ones, but about half the fish that we eat is aquaculture, so it's farmed. There's a little bit
Hmm,
more kind of control and predictability around that to a degree. But the other half, it's a natural resource and it's moving around and swimming wherever it is. And so, the idea of who has the supply at any given point in time, that's actually a variable thing. And that's also affected by regulations on overfishing and sustainability. You've got a lot of environmental and human rights and sustainability aspects that play into this as well. So, our ideal customer profile and the members that we are working with are either the original producers of the seafood, whether it's they're fishing or they are farming it, the processors in the middle who are taking what you would call raw materials and then getting that ready for consumption, filleting it, battering it, whatever you would do with it, packaging it, and then the retail distributors who are focused on a metro area and are bringing to that metro area all the seafood products that that metro area demands.
wow, because one of my other clients, actually, it's interesting. There is similar use case. Maybe check out the company. They're creating a construction ecosystem,
Okay.
like an ecosystem. So one of my clients called Activate. Basically, they're creating like a construction ecosystem of like, all right, we're going to bring through all the people that are in the construction industry into our platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing somewhat the similar thing, right? So the vision would be we're creating an ecosystem here for all the people, producers, processors, retail, like, and everybody should come in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that would I say correct there, or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's right. Because in here you can find one another and you have private and safe ways that you can unambiguously complete a transaction between one another. Where you think about all the stuff that you have to talk about. This isn't like just where do we meet for dinner? This is like I'm spending whatever it is, six figures on multiple shipping containers of something, and I might see it a month from now once it's all loaded up and delivered halfway around the world. And if there's anything that goes wrong, how do you find what was it that we agreed to?
totally?
It's a better way to do all of that.
I love this. I really love this. I mean, you don't get any more niche, right? But and then now I'm thinking to myself, who are the players?
Ah,
Like, are there players like in the market that are doing what you're doing, or is it like, hey, we use Oracle, or we use this, or we use something to do this? Like, what's the market look like?
yeah, predominant practice is actually using WhatsApp, so there's not a platform as a general market norm. There is a transformation play going on here. Now, we're fortunate in that we're not the first ones to do this, and we're not the only ones doing this, and it does take multiple companies to really make a market, make something happen. One difference that we have is in scope. We like to say that we don't touch the money and we don't touch the fish. It's an industry that has too many middlemen, and we're just providing the tools and community to enable people to work better with one another. And we've really narrowed the focus of what we're doing to do one thing really, really well and solve it really, really well, and really economically for our customers. And we have done quite a bit to study all of the other solutions that have been offered along the way and the ones that are on the market now. I've talked to some companies, some people who had run companies in the past. I mean, this goes back to the first one that I'm aware of was actually using dial-up modems that long ago. So we've been able to see around the corner a bit by learning from some of the other mistakes. We've certainly made our own mistakes along the way. But we're also in our platform, some of the stuff that we offer is based on best practices that we have learned in other industries that are a little bit further ahead on the transformation curve. So we've got, a compellingly easy user experience, all the things that would take somebody from WhatsApp and provide them something that's just as easy from their perspective to use in our platform.
So what's so I know you've been there, it says in LinkedIn, you've been there about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So when did the product actually, like, has the product been out? Because a lot of people listening need to understand. I actually just said this to somebody today. They're like, oh, it's a startup. They just came out with the product. I'm like, no, actually, they're an A-round company, but they're 10 years old, right? So it's like, so when did the product actually come to market? Like, when are you, because I know you were brought on board to scale it, right? But like, when did the product come on board? Like, how long has it been around?
Yeah, this has been a 5-year journey so far, maybe a little bit more than 5 years at this point, building out the concept with a bunch of advisory companies in the industry, tagging right along as that was going. The formal launch, the general market launch was about 2.5 years ago. And we've gotten from there into members in 49 countries and growing.
Nice. Yeah. So explain to me. So let's dig in. Let's get a little nerdy. What does the product actually do? What is the platform doing? Like, what are the top 3 features? Like, what is it actually doing? And then let's talk about the differentiation. But start with, what is the product doing?
Yeah, got you. It's an app. If you have product that you are offering to the market, it lets you set up your catalog. It lets you market yourself in the best way possible. And it lets you reach a broad marketplace of other companies that have an interest in that product. So we think of it as having all of our members on speed dial with the way that we're connected into notifications. Once you've found each other, then there's all the communication back and forth that needs to take place. And we've got tools, buttons for you to be able to offer and counter offer and back and forth and negotiate. We even had video conferencing and messaging built in, but attached right to that transaction. And when all of that is done, when it's agreed, we produce a record of the transaction that both the buyer and seller get that nobody else can see. It's all private. This is all private. But it unambiguously restates everything that was agreed to so that after the fact, it minimizes the number of disputes you might have.
Yeah, I got to tell you, like, so I was really into fishing when I was younger, and I totally I see the value proposition of this, but I also see that so you're putting your catalog in, so it's think e-commerce, you have a catalog of
Yeah.
fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting your fish in, right? But then once you get in, I'm assuming you do that really well, but then it's like, then you're connecting people with partners, which
Mm-hmm.
you're onboarding partners
Yep.
into the ecosystem. Yeah, there's so many, we got to reconnect, Steve. There's so many SaaS companies that I work with that are in completely different use cases. Like I was telling you, Activate. There's another company, completely different use case, but like
Yep.
similar, like, all right, we have a catalog and we have partners. And the thing about Philly is it's huge in e-commerce, like
Mm-hmm.
huge in e-commerce. But really, really cool. So in terms of your differentiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at the market, what it seems to me is there's not a lot out there, right? So there's WhatsApp, there's what you're doing. So how are you getting this out to the market? Like, how are you talking to the market? What's your go-to-market?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all focused through the eyes of the customer. So it starts with, are you looking to grow your business? Are you looking for more quality products? Are you looking for new markets or new revenues or new things to work with, or just looking to de-risk where you source, or how you deal with fraud and things like that. So that opens the conversation. I talked a little bit about user experience. I mean, that's critically important. And so usually once we start talking with somebody, and show them a little bit, right away, there's immediate recognition of, hey,
Yeah.
this applies to me. This has to do with seafood. I get this. In an industry that doesn't have much technology, you can't come in and say, hey, I have a technology solution. That just doesn't work. It's got to be, here's your business, and isn't this easy to use, and doesn't this feel natural? And we need to get there within 2 minutes in the demo.
Yeah, I feel like that there is probably technology, but there's a lot of old school people that, again, like you said, are using WhatsApp, right? So
Mhm.
you're like, why should I use this compared to WhatsApp, right? Is the
Yeah.
biggest challenge. So let's talk about challenges. That maybe flows into challenge. So what have been the biggest? I'm thinking, getting customer acquisition, like communicate. I think that's a challenge. But what are the top challenges, and
Yeah.
how are you overcoming them?
Great. Every step has had its challenges. I mean, that's part of why these kinds of businesses are fun. And the way that I frame that is, I think of our journey as a boat passing through a series of canal locks. So you can have an overall roadmap of how are we going to get over to the other side, to the other body of water. But to open each canal lock along the way takes a little bit of iteration, and eventually get the formula of, okay, this is how you open this canal lock. And when you get to the next one, that's the point where you can really start to iterate at a detailed level. And so every step has had its things. I think the most interesting one was probably not around the initial, yes, let's try this, but it was more around user adoption. So
Hmm,
this is something new. It's a change in process from
totally.
how people have previously operated. And so we had a situation where customer signs on, great, customer starts to use it, even better. But then our model thrives on being sticky and repeat
Hmm,
business and stuff like that. And so we had the challenge of, how do we turn this into something that is a sustained habit that people have over a long period of time. They've
right.
already said they want to use it. They've already signed up and everything. And so we looked at it, and got some guidance from a mentor of mine, who recommended, a former colleague that I worked with, who recommended a couple books on habit formation. So there are books by James Clear and by BJ Fogg that I'll credit for that. They're personal self-help books. How do I exercise more? How do I lose weight? But I would argue that those principles, I mean, these books are great SaaS business books, and they're great user experience books too. And so, we kind of learned a little bit more about how humans form habits, and it wasn't the obvious stuff we were thinking, let's add more features, let's do this, let's do that.
Yeah.
There were a couple adjustments that we needed to make in very targeted ways to our platform that created the right triggering events and reduced the ask in certain ways to just make it more habit forming. And when we did those things, that gave us the inflection point we needed. But we had to really get into the kind of human nature and habit psychology stuff to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it too that you're explaining to everybody is, so when you sell a software product, there is a process called customer success, right? And customer success, if you're a small company, you still got to be thinking like, all right, I got to onboard them, I got to retain them, I got to give them a process to use it, right? So that's huge. Like, so a lot of companies have customers, but it's like, how do we retain and keep these customers, right? So let's get into to talent and talent
Yeah.
acquisition. When we were pre-gaming, you were telling me about the success you've had, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. So when you're thinking about talent in your company and talent acquisition, recruiting people, how is that working for you? And what are some thoughts around that?
Yeah, our customers are global, so we need to be too. So we have a fully virtual, fully remote team, and we're bootstrapping Dealboard, and that's our business approach, and we intend to remain bootstrapped. So we have to keep a low expense ratio as well. We do a lot of work with agencies who specialize in connecting us with talent in different parts of the world. We're doing a lot. I know you're working in LATAM. We do a lot in LATAM. We also work in Europe, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in
Hmm.
Australia, and New Zealand as well. And we couldn't do what we do without the specialized knowledge and expertise that the agencies we're working with bring to us about the local markets, and also the ongoing professional support that they provide to the resources that they present to us.
Yeah.
So I love our team. We've been so impressed with the quality and the capabilities of the people that we are working with. Definitely exceeded our expectations, and it feels great to be able to provide career opportunities to highly qualified people who are in communities where something like a SaaS B2B business development role, there are pretty limited options
Yeah.
in their local market. And it's been just priceless also for the kind of culture and teamwork and kind of richness that we've been able to establish in the company as well. It's something special.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen in the last few years, Steve, is exactly what you're doing, right? We're seeing people do it themselves. We call it DIY, the whole world. So get their own talent in the US, get their own talent in Latin America, get their own talent. So we're always fighting and be like, oh, why would we work with you guys? Right. I mean, and so, and no, but that's great. I mean, that's where the market's heading. We're seeing it all the time. We're seeing so many people build teams in Latin America just because
Mhm.
the time zone and the work ethic and all that. So it's amazing. But this has been a great show, Steve. So last question, advice. You're a longtime B2B SaaS. So what are the two or three biggest piece of advice that you would give other solopreneurs thinking about starting a business, other entrepreneurs listening to this right now? What are the two or three biggest piece of advice?
Sure. I think the theme on all of these are going to be really like they're coming from a product person, right? And so it reflects the DNA of a product person.
Yeah,
First one is focus. Effective focused, market-oriented prioritization is the essence of product management, but it's the essence of startups too.
nice.
So get good at something, really good at it, kill it, measure it, but say no to all the other stuff.
Right.
So many times I run into teams that are doing so many different things that it's just diluting their attempt to be successful at thing one. And thing one can pivot over time. That's what pivots and learning is for. But the cheapest and fastest way to growth is just by maximizing the amount of stuff that you don't do to get there, in my
Totally.
view. Um, Second one is customers first and then build. Technical founders, and I do work with a lot of technical founders, they like to build stuff. But
Right.
if you build the product first and then try to take it to market, that's a problem, and that is wasteful. It's violating my first recommendation. So get out in the market, understand the market, the customers, the alternatives they're considering, and the real drivers of the people who make decisions and pay for and then actually use those alternatives, and then go work on building something. And I think you'll have a better chance of getting it right. And my last one, hopefully it's not too much of a sermon or anything like that, but we are bootstrapped, and I've been very grateful to be able to participate in a lot of bootstrapped opportunities, including 6 years reporting to a founder who later achieved a 10-figure exit on his bootstrapped business. And the common thread is, build a business, don't build an exit or a funding round. The common thread is, these successful entrepreneurs never talked about exit. They only talked about competitiveness and focus and customer value, really product leadership things.
Yeah.
And so if you prioritize around that and build positive energy in your company around that, and don't obsess on exit or how many cars or boats or whatever else you might buy at that point, the rest will come naturally if you build a fundamentally sound business and if that's your focus.
Awesome, man. So, you know what's so funny when you're home with your kids and the cleaner comes over and you're like, so that I apologize if I seem like I was literally texting because the cleaners just arrived and my kids have to go open the door. So like apologize about that if I seem distracted because that was really good. That was really good information. I could tell you're prepared for it. What I would like everybody to do, this has been a great podcast, but I'd like everybody to do is if you are a SaaS founder, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a solopreneur, if you're thinking about doing something, reach out to Steve. Reach out to Steve. He has a lot, I could tell you, he has a lot of expertise, right? Definitely connect with him on LinkedIn, right? But Steve, it's been awesome having you on the show. And I'm looking forward to following up and continuing the journey here.
Happy to exchange insights always, and so happy to be here. Thank you, Michael.
Great.